questions for us is, will Africa ride the fourth industrial revolution? If you look at some of the minerals, we're sitting on either 30 or 60% of them. Guinea, Conakry, 25 to 30% of the world's bauxite. We still ship it the same way we were doing 100 years ago. You dig it up, put it in a truck somewhere and ship it off. So I go to Conakry and I'm angry. If I'm sitting on 20 or 30% of a resource, you bet I'm going to build a smelter. Value addition, right? We're doing it the same way we used to do it before. And of course, there are all kinds of excuses. There's not enough energy. There's no public policy. There's no blah, blah, blah. But people take risks in other places that are worse than Guinea. But it's us. We wanted to ship it out quick. You know, I'm Soso actually. My ancestry is from Mali, Guinea. So when I go to Guinea, I talk to them in my local language, Soso. So they don't get offended when I say that. And then I go to Nigeria. Well, the Nigerians loved me. I worked there with Andrew. I was there 3 years. Preaching industrialization with Obasanjo and others. So when I heard cassava, yes, I used to go to those sessions on cassava. I used to also be at IITA as a young researcher, dreaming of agriculture. Yeah. So I say to the Nigerians, how can you be flaring gas, burning it up in the air, and you don't have enough fertilizer here? How can you be burning gas when you have a premature deaths of 28 to 30,000 people every year dying in Nigeria because of household air pollution? But you can do LPG with that gas. But it is burned for 50, 60 years. The technology is known. So I talked to the oil companies. I hosted a meeting in Vienna as CEO for Sustainable Energy for All with the World Bank, brought in 15 oil majors. And of course, as I say, people knew me. They say, fine, after we deal with the oil companies, we bring you in after lunch and do something crazy there. Then I said we should have zero flaring of gas by 2030. Oh my God, who is this crazy guy? What are his credentials? What does he know about oil and gas? And I said, I believe you can do it, so I'm going to convince the Secretary General that we're going to introduce a new global standard, zero flaring of gas. So it was all prearranged. I did it, and I sat down, and you can see them getting ready to attack for question and answer. But we had organized it well because there was Statoil in the room, the Norwegians. Zero flaring in the North Sea. They even imposed the carbon tax, and it is still profitable. Still profitable. So why not Nigeria? But we did better than that. So last year we had a deal, led by Jim Kim and my boss, the Secretary General. We had organized it well, and a number of countries signed up. Zero routine flaring by 2030. In other words, you take an idea from experts and you politicize it a little bit. You build the coalition and the right narrative. But with the best technical information from the best research centers and business, you know it's doable. The technologies that are needed, the business models. So that's one of the things I left also last year. We had a deal that will reduce gas flaring by 40%. The challenge now is to make it completely zero. But for Nigeria and my brothers and sisters in Africa, Tanzania, Mozambique, so much oil and gas. And in those conferences, I used to say, wait a minute, will the Tanzanians and the Mozambicans do like my brothers and sisters in West Africa? We just put it in a boat and ship it off somewhere else, and we are living in darkness. I said, so I said to President Kikwete, I said, Mr. President, you are starting fresh. So you have to do fertilizer. You have to get these oil companies to make those pipelines go in. You know why? Because everybody's interest was to build terminals, do LNG, and ship it off to Asia. It's shorter, quicker. I said, that's good. We need the Forex. But you use that money to diversify your economy, and you add value now. I said, but it's even better. Mozambique, Tanzania, oil and gas. Kenya, geothermal. Not too far away, Ethiopia, the Renaissance Dam. I say now we have an opportunity for an integrated East African energy grid, like the Europeans are doing. And East Africa is energy self-sufficient to drive their industrialization. I say all of this to say that Africa, we need to be even more ambitious today. Our population will be 1.4 billion, 2030, 2 billion or 2.2 billion, 2050. Today, I heard John Kerry say somewhere in Washington once for a conference we attended. He said, my worry is Africa. Very soon, 700 million kids below 30. And of course, I say to the Europeans, because I was living in Vienna, Central Europe, I have to do a seminar there now on migration, because they were fed up 10 years telling them, It's in the enlightened self-interest of Europe to invest down south. This is not about aid. You invest down south, you create a market. We have purchasing power. You build factories there so we can sell back to you and you can compete with the rest of the world because our labor is cheap and will reap that demographic dividend. I say, but if you don't, our children jump on the boats. If it is a crisis now, imagine what it will be when we're 2.2 billion, for God's sake. And of course, they wake up. So I got this strange invitation last month. Dr. Hume Keller, this think tank wants to invite you back to Vienna. Because they've been looking at your speeches 15 years ago, 10 years ago, talking about migration. And I've said to them, we want our children to come up north as paying tourists or businessmen, not illegal aliens. If we help to power the first, second, and third industrial revolution, of course, we should be ready to be now to lead the fourth industrial revolution through enlightened self-interest. Yeah, and so in Washington, I say, and some generals have agreed with me, if you look at the dangers of climate change, all the best studies, I've spent the last 7 years of my life in all kinds of, from Bali to Cancun to Paris. In Paris, I facilitated the afternoon session of the New Deal for Africa on energy and had all the powers lined up there signing MOUs. But the point is what? I say if you look at the problems we have in Africa, food security, lack of energy, 620 million Africans without electricity. By the way, according to Hakeem Adesina 2 days ago, if you look at that, food security, lack of energy, lack of opportunity, wow, and a growing population, that's a recipe for crisis. It will explode. So we have to create opportunity, and the opportunity comes from what you've been discussing here, value addition. I didn't give you new ideas. I just provoked you. Because why? When I listen to Hubert Danso's session in the morning, and of course, my dear friends in the last session on food, I said they don't need me. Because everything they said about the food value chain, you can say about energy. It is systems thinking today. And it's that nexus between energy, agriculture, food that we need to look at. Without that energy source, you can't do that low-cost processing and storage. You need to integrate this. Energy, irrigation. I've been to Gujarat myself. Before Prime Minister Modi became Prime Minister, I was already going to Gujarat, going to the desert. Yeah? So you need that integration, but it's also energy and manufacturing. Hakeem Adesina, it's no surprise. He's an ag economist like myself. He was in Iowa. I was in the best school, Illinois. Any Illinois people in the room? Michigan people? Of course they're here. Anyway, it is no surprise that after leading AGRA with his colleagues, working on agriculture so much, Hakeem becomes president of the African Development Bank. What's his first flagship? Access to energy. When I heard him in Kigali saying for Africa, the energy is also about industrialization, powering our economies to grow at 7, 10%, 11%, if possible, because of this rising population is very urgent. So let's talk now. I danced around a lot, right? So how many minutes do we have? 10 minutes? Let's see questions. I wasn't asked to give you any solutions. Because they said you are the experts. I'm just the guy who wants to lead a country in Africa. And I said, I was a keynote speaker at Bloomberg New Energy Finance last year, because they knew I was stepping down too. So they say, Kande, in 30 seconds, why are you going back to Africa, leaving us? You have all this constituency, all the finance guys in New York on energy. I said, to transform the lives of 6.5 million people. We have the largest deposit of iron ore in West Africa, at least for now, until Guinea begins to explore the Somandu Hills. We discovered that in the last 10 years. We've had one of the purest deposits and largest deposit of titanium for the last 30 years. So it made me angry sitting at the UN. Every statistic about my country is bad. Highest maternal mortality rate. One of the highest infant mortality rates. Highest corruption. You name it. And I'm sitting there saying, hell no. We're just 7 million people, for God's sake. With all of what God gave us, marine resources, how come we're poor? So yes, out of anger, I went back home. But you know something? They're teaching me politics every day. And they're quick to remind me, this is not the United Nations or World Bank. Come now to the School of Hard Knocks. So I'm very happy you took me out of there to say, come to Nairobi and listen to businessmen. Over to you, sir.